Before you book your moving truck and set up in Port Coquitlam, let's talk about what life here is really like. Today, I'm going to dig into Port Coquitlam, what it's really like to live here, look at the numbers, and talk about the 4 reasons that living in Port Coquitlam might not actually be the best fit for you. I'm Angelo, your favorite realtor with the Atlas Group. Let's jump into it, and we are going to start off with the commute. So Port Coquitlam's biggest transportation perk is the West Coast Express. It's fast, it's clean, it's relatively convenient, and it'll get you into Vancouver in about 40 minutes. Which doesn't sound so bad, but unfortunately it only runs on weekdays and at specific times during the weekdays. Only in the morning and only in the evening, because it's designed specifically for commuters, of course. So if you miss the last train, or if you work kind of odd hours, it's probably not really the best option for you. Plus, parking there can kind of suck, especially as you get closer to the last train in the morning. Now, of course, when it comes to SkyTrain, things are a little bit trickier because Port Coquitlam doesn't have its own station, or at least not yet. So what most people do is drive over to Coquitlam Central Station and use the park and ride, or they will take the bus from Port Coquitlam Station right over to Coquitlam Central to catch the SkyTrain. So if you are commuting, especially into Vancouver or Burnaby or, west, you just have to make sure that you've planned around this. Either you're driving or you're taking SkyTrain or West Coast Express, but there's some extra steps. Now, if you are driving, there are some things that you should know. Rush hour can be particularly challenging, and there's a couple of key hotspots that I will highlight. Coast Meridian Road, especially as you are getting up towards Burke Mountain, can be an absolute parking lot, especially in the afternoon. As Burke Mountain continues to expand as well, this traffic issue seems to be getting worse. Now, other access routes into Burke Mountain are in the works, but Coast Meridian is still the primary way up there for now. And it can easily take like 10 to 15 minutes to get from Lougheed up to Prairie on a really bad day. All right, next hotspot is Shaughnessy. Particularly the underpass that connects Northside Poco to Southside Poco around rush hour can get really jammed up because it's going from 2 lanes each way down to 1 lane each way as you go under the underpass. And the last major hotspot anyway is the Maryhill bypass. It's kind of considered an artery. It's still typically faster to take the Maryhill bypass than it is to drive through Port Coquitlam, through Coquitlam, or any of the other routes, but it can get pretty jammed up, especially at that one red light that always seems to be red no matter what time of day you are approaching it. If you know what I'm talking about, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So all of this to say, if you are commuting, whether it's Vancouver or Burnaby or Surrey or wherever, take that into account if you are thinking about living in Port Coquitlam, and make sure that you've planned ahead. Okay, number 2 reason that you might want to consider not living in Port Coquitlam is housing prices. Port Coquitlam is typically considered one of the more affordable options, especially when you compare it to the surrounding cities, Port Moody, Coquitlam, even Burnaby. It tends to be a little bit more affordable. And the numbers actually do support that in a pretty real way. Port Coquitlam is about 12% more affordable than Coquitlam, about 16% more affordable than Port Moody, and about 9% more affordable than Burnaby. Now, of course, these are averages, and depending on what exactly you're looking at, that will change. But just because it's better doesn't necessarily mean it's good. So let's take a look at the actual average pricing in Port Coquitlam. For a condo, you are looking at an average price of about $603,000. For a townhouse, you're looking at $898,000. And detached houses, you are looking at $1.364 million. Now, of course, these are averages. You can find homes that are cheaper than this, and of course, much more expensive than this if you look for them. We've sold condos in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, and we've sold detached houses in the 1.5, 1.6, or even higher type of range. Now, on the rent side, Poco tends to be, again, a little bit more affordable, but you're still looking at an average rent of about $2,600 a month. And as far as the overall cost of living goes, Port Coquitlam does still rank pretty good. It's actually 13% more affordable than the BC average. So, that is not something to scoff at. So while Port Coquitlam is cheaper than its neighboring cities, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's affordable, and depending on your income and your expenses and all that kind of stuff, Port Coquitlam may or may not actually be affordable to you. Okay, number 3, neighborhoods. Port Coquitlam isn't just one homogeneous block, and where you are in the city matters. If you're a local, you know that historically there has been a little bit of a rivalry between Northside Poco and Southside Poco. And in other words, the Terry Fox kids versus the Riverside kids. I don't actually know if the high school rivalry still exists, but if you talk to a Port Coquitlam resident that's around my age, they'll probably know what I'm talking about. Now, about the specifics. Northside has a pretty big mix of neighborhoods, some older and some newer. The older areas aren't quite as dense. There's lots of single-family homes and, in some areas anyway, larger lots. Some of the areas, like the Lincoln area where I am, historically have had a fair number of rental properties, but that is actually changing pretty quickly. There's lots of building newer, pretty large houses in my area up on Northside. One of the newest areas is actually Fremont, which is just east of Costco. And Fremont is primarily townhomes, and there are some condo buildings, some lower rise condo buildings there as well. Now, Fremont has a little bit more of an urban feel because there's restaurants, there's a couple shops, you do have the Walmart over there as well. There's also lots of walking trails around, and you have easy access to the dikes, so if you like to go for runs or take your dog for a walk or bike rides or whatever, that's usually a pretty good option, especially if you are looking for more of a townhome type of home to live in. Now, Southside, on the other hand, has some pretty big differences. And it's seen a pretty significant change even over the last 4 to 5 years. The city has really been focusing on revitalizing the area around City Hall and making it a really nice place to be. Around City Hall, you'll mostly find condos and some townhomes. There is one tower that's right next to Lions Park that's close to the underpass that I was mentioning earlier, but predominantly it's low rise and typically a little bit larger condos that you'll find. Now, if you keep going further south, like towards Mary Hill, again, you're in more of the single family home territory. And then as you go up the hill towards Citadel, that historically has been the higher end neighborhood in Port Coquitlam. There are some pretty big and fairly expensive homes up there. So as you can kind of see, there is a little bit of something for everyone, but you just have to know where to look and be really mindful of what sort of a feel you're looking for in the neighborhood that you ultimately settle in. Okay, and reason number 4 that you may or may not want to live in Port Coquitlam, we'll finish off with something a little bit more fun to talk about, which is shopping and restaurants. First up, Costco, because that's both shopping and a restaurant. Now, if you've been to the Costco in Port Coquitlam, you know it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse. It's great to have access to a Costco that's so convenient. But if you've ever tried to park there on a weekend, you're probably reminded of scenes from Mad Max. That parking lot might actually be the worst parking lot on the planet. It is absolute chaos. So if you value your sanity, go early, go close to the opening time, or better yet, just get your Costco orders delivered. And I mentioned it earlier, there is also a Walmart in Port Coquitlam. It's a little bit further east from the Costco, so it's actually a pretty decent area. If you need to go and get your weekend grocery shopping done, you can hit the Costco and hit the Walmart, and you've basically hit everything that you need to for your essentials anyway. Now, when it comes to food and drinks, Port Coquitlam has made some strides, some pretty good ones as well, in the last couple of years. You've got a fair number of options here now that we really didn't have before. You've got Tin House Brewing, you've got North Paw, you've got Nice Life Cocktails, and you have my personal favorite brewery on the entire planet, Patina. Anytime I talk to anybody about Port Coquitlam, clients or people that I'm trying to make my clients, I ask them if they have been to Patina. And if they haven't been, I absolutely always offer to bring them there. It is that good. Now, we're not sponsored by Patina, so I'm just saying this because I really, really like going there. I like the beer and I really like the food.
But we would be happily sponsored by Patina, so if you happen to be management at Patina and you are responsible for sponsorships, send me a DM. I'd love to talk to you.
You've got a pretty decent selection of regular restaurants as well. Emilio Finati Pizza, Reggiano's Pizza, Big Flat Pancake, that's just to name a few. There are really lots of options for everything. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention my new favorite restaurant in all of Port Coquitlam. And frankly, it might actually be one of my favorite restaurants that I have ever been to. It is an omakase sushi restaurant. And if you love sushi and you're game to try new things, I absolutely recommend that you go try this place. It's called Sushi K Kamizato, and it is phenomenal. My wife and I had been meaning to go for the longest time, and we finally pulled the trigger not too long ago, and oh my god, I cannot believe that we waited so long. It was amazing. We spent basically the whole night just chatting with Keith and his wife and sharing stories and eating delicious food, drinking some good Japanese beer. It was awesome. Do yourself a favor and go check it out. Especially if you're a music fan, because Keith has old heavy metal and rock band posters and records and guitars up on the wall, and we were hanging out there listening to things like Slipknot and Disturbed and Metallica, and I can't remember what else he was playing, but anyway, it was awesome. Okay, enough about my favorite sushi place. I do have one bone to pick with the food scene in Port Coquitlam. Where are all the independent coffee shops? Seriously, for a city of this size, you would think that there would be at least a handful of independent, cozy little coffee shops where you can sip on a coffee and have a croissant and do so out of a cup that isn't a, green mermaid. I can name like 10 coffee shops in Coquitlam off the top of my head. Nemesis Coffee, Veroni & Co., Creekside, Blackberry, Ibex Cafe, Cafe Divano, Coffee Bun, whatever. You get the idea. There are a lot of them. I so badly want a cool little independent coffee shop in Port Coquitlam that I'm going to make you an offer. If you currently live in another city and you want to move to Port Coquitlam, and you also want to open a coffee shop, I will sell your house for free. And bonus points if it's a Greek coffee shop so that I don't need to drive all the way into Kitsilano to get Greek sweets, but that's besides the point. Anyway, rant over, but I am actually serious. If you are willing to open up a coffee shop in Port Coquitlam and you need to sell your house, send us a message. We'll talk. So yeah, Port Coquitlam, we have a lot of options for food and drink, but it's not what you would call a culinary hotspot, nor does it have a ton of nightlife. The variety that you find here just isn't as broad as you find in Coquitlam, and definitely nowhere near what you find in Vancouver. So if that's what you are really looking for and you want that at your doorstep, Port Coquitlam might not actually be the best choice for you to live in. So putting it all together, if you are choosing to live in Port Coquitlam and you're comparing it to other cities, you will absolutely spend less on things like housing and general cost of living. Especially because Port Coquitlam has amongst the lowest property taxes in Greater Vancouver, which is excellent. But compared to places like Calgary or Edmonton or other affordable Canadian cities, you're still paying relatively high cost. An average house price of $1.36 million means you'll still need a pretty healthy income in order to qualify to get a mortgage on a home here. Now, can you find places that are cheaper? Yes, absolutely. But you'd still need to factor that into your budget. Not to mention factoring in the possible extra commute time, especially if you're moving from somewhere west like Burnaby or New West. Now, on the flip side, if you prioritize having a little bit more space, having access to nice green areas, lots of walking, lots of trails, lots of outdoor space, and a really homey feel, well, maybe Port Coquitlam actually is the right option for you. There's a reason I decided to move back here. And frankly, I can't picture myself and my family living anywhere else anymore. If you're still watching this video, you must really love Poco. Or maybe you just like listening to my
very soothing voice.
But either way, if you're still here, you should check out some of our other videos. They will be linked up in the corners or down in the description. Click on them. Do it. Do it now. And while you're clicking on things, make sure you click all those buttons that YouTube also wants you to click. I'm Angelo with the Atlas Group. You're welcome.